Imagine a shadow falling over the 14th century world. It travels faster than any army, respects no king, and is completely invisible. In just 5 years, it will wipe out nearly half the world's population. This wasn't a war, it was a plague. We call it the Black Death. But this wasn't just a single, isolated event. It was a 400-year reign of terror, a recurring nightmare that began its long march around 1331 and held humanity hostage until its final outbreaks in the 1770s. This isn't just a story of death. It's the story of how a microscopic organism tore down an old world and from its ashes built a new one. Our story begins not in Europe, but on the dry, windswept steppes of Central Asia, possibly around modern-day Kyrgyzstan. Around the year 1331, an environmental change, maybe a drought, forced rodents out of their burrows and into closer contact with humans. They carried a deadly passenger, the bacterium Yersinia pestis. But the real carrier was the flea. A flea would bite an infected rodent, drink its blood, and the bacteria would multiply inside the flea's gut. When that rodent died, the starving flea would jump to the nearest warm body. Often, that was a black rat, and black rats loved to travel. They stowed away on Silk Road caravans and merchant ships, carrying their microscopic cargo across entire continents. The plague's dramatic entry into Europe reads like a horror story. In 1347, Mongol armies were besieging the Genoese trading port of Kaffa in Crimea. The plague broke out among the Mongols, devastating their ranks. In a desperate, terrifying act, the Mongol general ordered his dead, plague-infected soldiers to be catapulted over the city walls. The Genoese merchants fled by sea, but it was too late. The plague was already on their ships. When they docked in Sicily, Messina, and Marseille, they didn't just unload cargo. They unleashed Armageddon. From these ports, the pestilence spread across Europe like a firestorm. It moved at the speed of a walking man, following trade routes, rivers, and pilgrim paths. No one was safe. The disease itself was a nightmare. It took 3 forms. The most common was bubonic, named for the buboes, agonizing, apple-sized swellings in the armpits, neck, and groin. Then came the fever, the chills, and the vomiting of blood. Death usually followed in 3 to 7 days. Even worse was the pneumonic plague, which attacked the lungs. It was spread by a simple cough and was nearly 100% fatal, often within 24 hours. Society completely collapsed. Fear shattered human bonds. Priests refused to give last rites. Parents abandoned their sick children, and mass graves were dug daily. Desperate people searched for answers. Some, known as the flagellants, marched from town to town, whipping themselves, believing the plague was God's punishment for their sins. Others, in a dark and tragic turn, looked for human scapegoats. This led to horrific massacres of Jewish communities, who were falsely and cruelly blamed for poisoning wells. Between 1347 and 1351, this first wave killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people. In Europe, that was 30 to 60% of the entire population gone. This cataclysm had a shocking, unintended consequence. It broke the back of feudalism. With so many workers dead, the labor force was suddenly small and valuable. For the first time, peasants could demand actual wages, better conditions, or simply leave their manors to find better work elsewhere. The old system of lords and serfs, a system that had lasted for centuries, crumbled. The Black Death, in its sheer destructive power, had accidentally triggered a massive social and economic revolution. But the plague didn't just disappear. That was only the first wave. For the next 400 years, it returned every generation, a terrifying echo reminding everyone of their fragility. It returned as the Great Plague of London in 1665, killing a quarter of the city's population. It struck Marseille in 1720. Its last major European outbreak was in Moscow in 1770. It only began to truly recede from Europe after this, likely due to the introduction of the brown rat, which displaced the black rat, and the implementation of effective, iron-fisted quarantines. The Black Death was a crucible of fire, suffering, and death. It remains the single greatest catastrophe in recorded human history, but it was also a profound historical turning point. It proved that even the most rigid structures of power can be broken, not by kings or armies, but by the smallest things we cannot see. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past fascinating, Please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next one.